Hello friends, today we will be talking about the Regulating Act of 1773, and as the name suggests, the Regulating Act is designed to regulate the affairs and the conduct of the East India Company in India. But before we go into the specific aspects of the Regulating Act of India, the provisions of the Regulating Act of 1773, we should also look at the background to the Regulating Act of 1773. Now, as far as the Regulating Act of 1773 is concerned, it is also influenced by certain intellectual currents, undercurrents, which are emerging in the context of the late 18th century society. We should understand that by this time, industrial revolution is picking up speed, okay, and by the 19th century, it will reach its epitome. But the philosophy required for such a drastic change in the society of that point of time is also being propounded at this particular juncture of history. Who are these people involved in providing the intellectual contours of that period? The people involved are who gave us the philosophy of utilitarianism, and then followed by James Mill, who was also an utilitarian, okay. And then there is Adam Smith and his publication of The Wealth of Nations, which also is pivotal moment in the emergence of capitalism, in the emergence of free trade in this world, okay. Adam Smith. Therefore, civil society and its ideas are leaning towards certain principles, the principles which will become integral part of any kind of administration, any kind of state administration of that point of time. And the East India Company will now be governed by such principles also, the principles being individuation, the importance of the individual towards society, which is directly derived from Jeremy Bentham's idea of utilitarianism, and then there is the idea of free trade, which is also a byproduct, not just a byproduct, but an important step coming from directly from the idea of individuation, that is free trade. That trade should be open for all, laissez-faire, which means open trade for all, okay, without monopolies. And then we also come to the idea of accountability. Which is championed by people like Edmund Burke. Now, Burke is a philosopher and also a politician, prominent politician of the point of time, and he is also known for suing individuals, and he is also known for suing officers of the East India Company, the officers who had returned, officers like Warren Hastings, okay. He is known for suing them because of misconduct or in allegations of gross corruption. So, the Regulating Act is prefaced by certain social dislocations and certain social stigma attached to things like corruption. When the British administrators, of the East India Company, they return to England, they come with extravagant and lavish lifestyles. They come with a new lifestyle, and they also come with new ideas, and it seems that they are indistinguishable from Indian Nawabs, okay, because they have amassed great wealth, and now they have come to England and have come back with new ideas, and ideas which seem anathema, ideas which are anathema to the British society of that point of time, okay. And therefore, you see, among the civil society there is suspicion, and there is a feeling of you see, the need for regulating the affairs, the need for regulating the affairs of the company, and the need for regulating the conduct of the officials of the company. The Regulating Act of 1773 is prefaced upon these aspects, these spheres of influence within the civil society and within the political society of Britain. All right. So, what are the provisions of the Regulating Act of 1773? Firstly, the Regulating Act of 1773, through it, the Governor of Bengal, becomes the Governor General now. Okay. The Governor of Bengal is now made the Governor General, and he is also given a council of 4 members. Now, through this council, he is responsible for the administration of India, and at the same time, the presidencies of Bombay and Madras now have to report to the Governor General when it comes to matters of warfare or when it comes to matters of diplomacy with the regional states of India. Therefore, we see the very beginning of centralization in India. The centralization, we see the very beginning of centralization in India, the centralization of authority, the centralization of control, which is also a part of the idea of accountability. Okay, that authority, even in the presidencies, will be accountable to the central authority, that is the Governor General, and also the Governor General will be accountable to the Court of Directors. Court of Directors, which is made out of the proprietors of the company. But who administers or who oversees the Court of Director? The Court of Director now is made answerable to the Parliament, because the Court of Director has to regularly send the communiques, okay, the communiques that they receive from India. They have to send regular reports upon affairs in India from now on. Therefore, a gradation of accountability is being set so that everything reverts back to the Parliament, and there is some kind of oversight when it comes to the administration of India, be it revenue, be it military, or be it civil administration. So, these are the you see the aspects which refer to the idea of accountability. And also there are movements, okay, a slight gradual movement towards free trade, although it will come to fruition later, but it also seems that there is a gradual movement towards the idea of free trade, that trade should be free for all and that the company should not have monopoly over trade in India. The idea has emerged, but the thing is it will be implemented later on. Okay. So, this is the way in which the Regulating Act tries to fix some kind of accountability when it comes to the governance of India. Okay. The Governor General's Council, the Governor of Bengal becomes the Governor General. He is assisted by a 4-member council. Then there is you see the Court of Directors being accountable to the Parliament. It also establishes a Supreme Court. Through the Regulating Act of 1773, a Supreme Court is also established in Calcutta, all right. But there are certain problems in the entire structure of the Regulating Act of 1773. The problem being the Governor General, he is not in complete command or in complete control of the council. Okay, the council is unruly, and in most cases the council does not you see is in direct control of the Governor General. At the same time, the Governor General does not have control over the presidencies also, because there is a clause of emergency. Okay, in cases of emergency the presidencies can act independently, and that clause is abused, okay, most of the time. So, therefore, the Governor General does not have too much power, and you see the Governor General is not really all powerful and not really being able to administer the presidencies or his council. At the same time, there is the question of, the most important question being, sovereignty. The Regulating Act of 1773 is actually an attempt at demarcating sovereignty. Who is the sovereign of India? Is it the company or the crown? And this question comes up again and again in the formation of policies in Britain, okay, and it would be a running theme right up until 1858, the Government of India Act of 1858, okay, fixing the loci of sovereignty with the East India Company or with the crown. Actually the movement has already been progressing towards the fixing of sovereignty and the head of the crown, okay, and the Regulating Act is also a part of that entire infrastructure of policies which is trying to fix sovereignty within the crown. But the Regulating Act of 1773 fails to do it categorically. Okay, a step has been taken, but it is not a categorical step in fixing the sovereignty in the head or in the hands of the crown. So, this is what you have to know about the Regulating Act of 1773. I hope you guys will be working hard, and I hope you will do good with that. I bid you goodbye.